webinar. So welcome to those of you who are now joining us as we officially start the webinar, and this on self-service, how to remove calls from your contact center. I'll be your host, Charlie Mitchell, and I'm the features editor here at Call Center Helper. And we have two excellent speakers for you today. And our first is Paul Weald. How are we doing today, Paul?
I'm good, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning for those from west of the pond.
Absolutely, and I know for those of us who are just joining us, could you just tell us a little bit again about your role within the contact center industry?
Yeah, so I've been in the industry for 25 years now. So I kind of trace that back to when customers stopped walking down the high street to buy car insurance and home insurance and started to kind of pick up the phone. So initially on the technology side of contact centers, and most of the last 20 years in consultancy. So kind of broader spectrum of helping people to improve and make a difference in terms of the role that their contact center plays, and how certainly over that time they've actually changed the balance between the phone-based contact and digital online sort of self-service.
Yeah, I think it's been a very interesting transition. I know you have lots more great insights to share with us, as does our second presenter today, and that's Mike Murphy. How are we doing today, Mike?
Really good, Charlie. Hi, everybody. Nice to be back.
Excellent stuff. And for those of you, those of our audience who might not know much about kind of Genesys, I assume most of them will have, but do you just want to give them a little bit of an intro into your role within the company?
Yeah, so Genesys is like a global player in providing software for the contact center space, kind of a proven brand, a leading brand. My own sort of role, if you will. I love customer facing, Charlie, so that's kind of what I like to do. So from that perspective, I've got a sort of a 60-40 split between 60% helping prospective customers become onboarded Genesys users. So from that perspective, that's sort of most of my work. And what's quite nice, I get to do some of that in the UK and some of that in Ireland. So I get a nice sort of mix up there, really, of working with the two different populations. And then the other sort of 40% of my time then is where I'm looking after existing customers who were onboarded maybe a year ago, maybe 4 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, and their needs obviously have evolved and changed, and kind of helping them to figure the right path forward to improvement. So I really like the mix, and of course the UK and Irish mix is fantastic. So from that point of view, yeah, it's a good spot. It's a good spot. I'm happy.
Excellent stuff. And I know working so closely with your clients, there's lots of interesting self-service innovations that you've been noticing that you'll have to share for us today. But before we get into both of our presenters' presentations, just quickly like to, for everybody who's just logging in to join us, quickly alert them to our chat room, which we have running alongside our webinars, and you can join the discussion this week at www.callcenterhelper.com/chat, or it's probably easier if you just type in cch.chat and just type that into your browser. This is a really great place to share best practices with your fellow call center professionals, and even put some of your questions to our panel, which is another thing that we'll come back to after both of their presentations. And another bonus of being in the chat room today is that you can download both presenters' slides to catch up on all the learnings that they'll be sharing with us. And you can also join our quiz, which we'll come to later. And what I'd like to do when I'm watching these webinars is to put one webinar on one side of my screen and the chat room in the other, so I can kind of keep up to date with both. Or it's probably easier for you if you have your phone out, you can just log in through the chat room that way. And you can also take part in our quiz and share tips through that device. And just for your kind of general notice, we also have a version of the replay and the slides, which will be available later this afternoon at www.callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars. And an added bonus of being in the chat room is that their bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates or an Amazon gift voucher is given for the best tip or the best question, which is put forward to our panel. So yeah, it's really a great place to be. And also the winner of our quiz will share the same prize. So, well, not share, they'll have one of their own. But let's start today's webinar properly with a nice poll question. And that today is, how integrated is self-service within your call center? So I'll just launch that one up for everybody. And the options that you have are how integrated is, so the options that you have are our solutions proactively transfer customers. We provide an option for the customer to be transferred or not at all. What do you think about this question, Paul, and what do you kind of expect to come up?
Well, hopefully it's kind of thought-provoking for the audience. I think what I would say in terms of choosing your options here is it's about how you treat customers when they've been on an online journey, a digital journey, and they need to come off channel, whether that's through chat or through phone. And it's really how easy you make that process for them. Where it's proactively transferring, then that's where you believe that you're giving great customer service. Not at all basically means they would have to just pick up the phone and call, and the we provide an option is the kind of halfway house.
Excellent, excellent, and thanks for that intro, and we'll see what the results were. So we have 16% saying our solutions proactively transfer customers. We have 46% saying that we provide an option for the customer to be transferred, and only 38% saying not at all, which I think is actually a very promising note to pass over control over to you, Paul, and I'll let you fire away with your presentation.
Okay.
Excellent.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. In terms of my discussion today around how to remove calls from the contact center, I'd like to start with a little thought for the day. So this one is attributed to Warren Buffett, who's one of the most successful investors of all time. And he said, in a chronically leaking boat, energy devoted to changing vessels is more productive than energy devoted to patching leaks. So I think what I take from that is you have a choice to make in terms of how you're achieving a digital self-serve solution, which is around how can you make it better versus how can you do something game-changing in the way that you're providing sort of customer support. And in terms of framing why this is an important topic, I want to start by just reminding everyone of almost a kind of hierarchy about how you can make business improvements in your contact center. So on the left-hand scale is the impact on customer experience, and the bottom scale is the degree of complexity. So if you can find ways to actually eliminate the need for customers to call, then that is extremely beneficial for those customers that want to do things themselves. Likewise, if you can automate a function, you're then enabling them to be able to sort of self-serve. And if you can't do that, then sort of simplifying it. So in other words, it just becomes quicker and potentially, although we're getting into slightly more complex scenarios, actually consolidating processes, so allowing a customer to do multiple things within a single interaction with a kind of self-serve option at the front. What we're not talking about today is anything to do with the sourcing of how you manage that customer support in terms of digital support. So I'm not getting into the pros and cons of in-source, outsource. I'm not getting into the scenarios of if you provide chat, then are you doing it onshore or sort of offshore? Those are decisions that you can make downstream. I want to focus to us very much around the things that are going to make most value. For those people in the poll that don't provide anything at the moment, hopefully some insights to help you create those business cases to sort of move forward. And so here's a benchmarking report that basically was asking practitioners where they should best invest in digital self-service. And I guess this comes back to, are you changing your vessel or patching the leaks? And the highest scoring responses were around developing website capabilities and developing mobile applications, followed then on by the things that came out in the introduction around where you're currently working at the moment, a number of you, which is around chatbots and sort of IVR. So I want to start the conversation very much around those things that are the highest value elements. I mean, in terms of websites, and this is very much around how you design an engaging digital journey. It starts from understanding the steps that a customer takes, the context of what they're trying to do, why they're actually visiting you today, and then whether you're providing the right functionality. So if you're a banking customer, then and you've got an online capability, then have you got all of the functionalities that they would want to do day to day? And then lastly, is it intuitive and simple from a user experience perspective? So you may well be reliant on your digital colleagues to create these functionalities, but from a customer support perspective, if these things aren't in place, then people are going to start dropping out of the online journey straight away, which is not what you actually want. Then in terms of mobile customers, so going back to the banking analogy, this is about thinking around offering a mobile service, and that's been enormously successful at giving people greater access and control to their sort of money. And what's interesting is that Google research showed that nearly 3/4 of customers will switch away from a poorly designed mobile state. So they will actually make a decision about which vendor they're actually choosing to use, which supplier, based on the experience they get from a mobile site or app. And then Contact Babel, who do a lot of annual research in the UK and in the States, they last year, and this is bang up to date because the report was produced in November, said that 46% of their respondents offered mobile functionality for customer service, with a further 23% having definite plans to do so. So that's then getting us up towards the 70% mark of respondents who are actually either have or are planning to actually have a mobile capability. And what's interesting from a customer support perspective is then how best do you provide that assistance when customers need to sort of contact you, so when they are confused or they require support. And what's interesting here, and again using the same Contact Babel benchmarking report, is that a staggering 75% of providers just provide a sort of telephone number. So that's going back to a very unjoined up experience, in that if you're having trouble with the online and digital capability, whether that's through a desktop, an iPad, or a mobile site on your phone, actually to have to then make a separate telephone call, that loses all of the context. So they have to explain, the customer then has to explain to customer service agents exactly what they were trying to do. If you then jump down to click to chat, click to call, the difference there is that that's completely integrated to the online or mobile experience, and actually in doing that transfer across to the human agent, which could be on the chat a scenario actually fronted by a sort of chatbot, then they're doing that with the full context of what the customer was doing at the point at which they're actually asking for support. So you can see that that's much more effective from a customer experience perspective. And you can also see that there are some intermediary steps, again, providing an email address or a hyperlink from the mobile site to the online capability. Again, they're easy to do, but they don't necessarily make it the best experience for you for the sort of customer. So definitely I would advocate moving towards the solutions here that actually retain the context when a customer needs to actually contact you. And how can you do that? Well, actually, this is where mobile devices become really interesting, because if you've used your thumb or ID&V information to get into the mobile app, then what you've done is you've already identified who you are. So that if you then did a click to call, then you actually have already passed the ID&V test. So in other words, that speeds up the inquiry when the contact center agent speaks to the sort of customer. There's also the ability to use the GPS capabilities from a geographical basis. A current client I've got at the moment is the UK's leading breakdown provider, and they now have about 1/3 of their inquiries when customers who are driving their vehicles, personal customers, and have actually broken down. About 1/3 of their breakdown inquiries now come through the app that they provide. And what that has done is made it very easy and simple for the customer to actually request a patrol to visit them. But there's a much bigger benefit, which is that the geographic information means that the location of the vehicle and where the customer is much more accurate. And what that's actually done is reduced the time it takes for the patrol vehicle to actually get to the sort of customer. And if you think about that from a business case perspective, it's clear that there's a customer experience benefit, but actually compared to a contact center agent, a patrol person is paid a higher salary, they have an asset which is a van and a lot of equipment, and if you can actually improve the utilization and the productivity, then what that means is that there is a significant business case in actually sort of service provision. So some of this is not just about the customer experience, some of this is actually about the overall business benefit. The other piece from a digital journey is that you know something about where the customer has been, so therefore you can provide additional granularity around context. For example, if you know the customer is dropping out of the online journey at the payment screen and they're IDMVing into you, then you can just basically have a very simple way of being able to collect payment. In fact, you could even automate that through sort of IVR. And the other thing is that the mobile device, when a contact center agent is speaking to the customer, gives the customer the ability to actually utilize the device to provide some really interesting information. So they can use the cameras to take photos if it's about a fault and it needs a sort of physical repair. They can automate a two-way interaction. They can scan a QR code, or they could potentially use visual IVR again to be able to give a greater selection around why they want to sort of speak to someone. So I'm a big fan of taking advantage of the capability of mobile devices, and that then driving a different level of experience and potentially a much more significant business case. Then in terms of how you implement self-service options, I guess the number one golden rule is that you have to be able to track how well that's working. So in your business case, you'd certainly want to map the benefits to your KPIs. So in other words, is this actually driving contact and failure demand out of the contact center? And you'd want to be able to measure before and after the difference that any additional functionality online is actually provided, and also be prepared to continuously improve. It's okay if the initial pilot or the initial rollout doesn't provide the results that you were expecting, providing that you learn from it and you understand and make that adjustment as is required. And in that way, you then ensure that the results are actually sort of sustained. And in terms of how this all fits together and some of the decision making that you may have about when best to promote a digital channel, take a little example from a bank I worked with a couple of years ago. And their exam question to us was, is this the right time for us to promote our online and our mobile banking service to our customers? And that would have meant investing in terms of higher handle times in order to have those conversations with sort of customers. And they actually made a decision at that point in time not to. And it's quite interesting to go back through the logic. So they first of all said, well, how many of our customers have currently got our mobile app? Well, it was only 53%, so there was some more to be, or sorry, only 47%, so there was some more to be done to drive up registering for the service. Then the question was, do they actually use it? And this is very much in a banking environment about using it regularly so that you become familiar. And then when they do use it, then do they need support? And really it's the left-hand numbers that multiply together in terms of the genuine self-serve completion. So you have to have access to the application, be confident using it and be able to use it yourself without support. And in this particular scenario, they actually tracked the fallout from the current use of the functionality they had. And basically we did some analysis to say, what's the reason why support is needed? Is it to do with failure demand? So is it something that the bank should have done that is generating prompting the response? Actually, in this case, it wasn't that. Was it about, at the other end of the spectrum, customers not understanding how to use the app? No, it wasn't that. It was actually the fact that they didn't have sufficient functionality on the app to be able to do the day in, day out things. And therefore, if the customers went and tried the app, found that it wouldn't allow them to, make a payment to someone who was a third-party payer that wasn't set up, but that was what they wanted to do today, then actually, if they had to ring up, then, guess what? Next time they needed to do that, they were just going to continue to ring up anyway. So it's actually a very interesting scenario to be able to answer a question of when is the right time to actually start to promote and educate users, and so that they actually utilize the services that you actually have. You basically need to make sure that three things are true. Firstly, that you have a high registration rate for the service. Secondly, that they are frequent and habitual customers who know how to use the service. And thirdly, they're actually capable of actually managing it themselves, and they don't become sort of peak callers. And a final thought is in terms of ideas around how you might innovate. And if you look me up on LinkedIn, my title is the Contact Center Innovator. So then I get very interested in the role that customers can play in helping other customers. And this is the kind of concept of sort of crowdsourcing for customer service. And in one particular example of business that I'm working with, Limitless, they've actually now started to get customers to be involved in the digital journey. So in other words, they essentially recruit existing digital customers who are used to using a service, and when they have a new release, and digital platforms tend to have these in a very agile way, they actually set tasks that they push out on an app to those registered customers, and they ask them to complete a task. So that's about using a particular part of the kind of digital journey, and then provide feedback on it. And essentially that's kind of taking user acceptance testing to a whole new level, because it's actually allowing trusted advocate customers to be able to use a service and actually provide almost some insurance around making sure that the functionality works and that it's intuitive and sort of easy to use. So all those criteria that I mentioned at the sort of start of the session. So again, think outside the box. It's not just about what you and your digital colleagues internally can do. There may be a role for your customers to play as well. Charlie, back to you.
Excellent stuff. Thanks for that, Paul. Yeah, so many great takeaways that I've got from that. But first of all, I just want to quickly alert everybody to the fact that we're about to move on to our quiz. So if you could go, maybe use your phone or another window and just type in cch.chat and get into our chat room to take part. So whilst you're all doing that, I'll just bring the quiz along onto the screen just for everybody there. Sorry?
There's a first for me, this quiz, though. I'm interested.
See how it goes. But yeah, while everybody's logging in to the chat room now, I just want to, there's so many great things that I took away from that, Paul. There was map the customer's online self-service journey to understand the context of why they're visiting. I thought that was a very good point. There's also look for solutions that retain the context for the customer, so their identity, their historical information. And I really like that idea of using their location through certain devices, and also mapping your KPIs beforehand to see how you would define success on your self-service implementation. And I think doing the before and after, as you suggest, is a very nice idea. So I see we now actually have 80 people already ready for the quiz, so I will launch it now. So the first question for everybody is true or false? More than 50% of companies believe self-service will be the fastest growing channel in customer service by 2021. And for, just in case it didn't make it clear, there should be an A, B, C, D panel at the bottom of the chat room now. So I'll quickly let everybody fill in the answers to this one.
How long has the audience member got, Charlie? Like a clock, tick, 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 tick.
Yeah, I'll give them a couple more seconds now to put in their answers, and then I'll move on to the next one.
For those in the UK, think sort of countdown. You know, who can do the tune? Da, 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 da.
Maybe that's what we need. We need to get a big clock behind me. Excellent. So most people did in fact get that one right. And the correct answer was A, true. And in fact, according to Unbabel, almost 9 in 10 companies see self-service as the future for customers. Excellent to see so many of you getting that one right. And the second question now we have is, according to Gartner, what percentage of customers report solving their issues completely via self-service? Is it A, 9%, B, 24%, C, 39%, or D, 54%? And also, just as a reminder for everybody taking part, that the winner of this quiz will in fact get a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates as a real reward. So there's an incentive to make really think about these questions. So give a couple more seconds.
Yeah, we're going to see the sort of numbers ratcheting up. Then now people realise that they're in it to win it.
That can be my catchphrase. Excellent stuff. So, in fact, there are only 6 people that got that one right. That was a very tricky question, that one there.
Yep.
But an explanation for this answer is that Gartner also stated in their report that many companies create more channels for customer service because this creates complex customer resolution journeys as customers switch frequently between channels. I think this goes back to Paul's point of mapping the journeys beforehand very well. So the next question that we have is, in 2019, which British supermarket opened the doors of the UK's first till-free convenience store? Is it A, Sainsbury's, B, Tesco, C, Morrison's, or D, Asda? Some very tricky questions for everybody this week.
And a little hint, it was based in London, not very far from where I am now.
People who have already put their answers in. No. Excellent. We'll see. The right answer was, in fact, Sainsbury's. Good to see that 20 of you got that one right. So shoppers at the Sainsbury's local convenience store at Holborn Circus in London could use the supermarket's smartphone app to scan their groceries as they go around the store. However, tills were reinstalled just 3 months later, so perhaps that kind of signifies that maybe it's a little too early for that specific self-service implementation.
Yeah, so hands up who avoid the sort of self-service checkouts at the local supermarkets. Yeah.
Excellent stuff. So 2 more questions to go now, and this one is, according to 2019 research, what percentage of contact centers haven't made any changes to their self-service system since it was first installed? Is it A, 4.4%, B, 9.4%, C, 14.4%, or D, 19.4%? Lots of 0.4% for me to say there, but it seems that everybody's got their answers in now. So
past responses too.
Yeah, very good to see. And yes, so yeah, excellent to see most of you getting this one right. And we'll go into the explanation that according to Call Center Helpers report, what contact centers are doing right now, 2019 edition, almost 1 in every 5 contact centers make the surprising self-service mistake. Great to see so many of you reading my reports. So as we move into the final question, the leader at the moment is Michael. Let's see if you can take home the bottle of champagne. So in which capital city is our final question? It's not you, Mike, is it? So in which capital city was Liquorette, a self-service cocktail bar, opened in 2019? Is it A, Paris, B, Prague, C, London, or D, Stockholm? Yes, so another very tricky one. I've been quite evil with the questions this week.
Brutal.
It's brutal.
Yeah. As just the final question, definitely no sort of hints from me.
I didn't throw that one.
So let's take a look. So yes, C, London. The joint top answer there was the correct one. And in fact, the self-service cocktail bar, Liquorette, has opened in London, where guests can simply make their way up to the bar, pick their flavour, and pour their own drink. So I think that was a particularly interesting example of self-service there. And the winner is Pico, overtaking Michael at the last hurdle there. So congratulations to you.
Very good, sir. Oh, lady. Yes, very good. Thank you.
Excellent stuff. So congratulations, Pico, and a bowl of chocolates, a bowl of champagne, and a box of chocolates will be on their way to you. So let's now go back to the chat room. It's been buzzing away, I can see, alongside me. And we'll go straight into our first tip. And that's coming from Amber, who says, while our bots assist with the ease of self-service, our contact center agents are now fielding the more complex calls, which impacts handle time, forecasting, and staffing. Do you think, Paul, that maybe with all these self-service implementations that we need to think more about the changing advisor role?
Yes, absolutely. I think Amber's spot on, is that you are going to change the mix of calls that come into your contact center when you significantly enhance the digital capability. Yes, you're going to lose some calls, and they may well be the simpler calls. You're going to create some incremental demand, which is customers who need assistance, and the consequences of that may well be that the role of the human interaction becomes a lot more around those particularly complex or edge type cases, because you've gone after the so-called low-hanging fruit through digital and sort of chatbots and so forth.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting to see how that role changes, and maybe it might mean that we might have to start paying our call center agents a bit more, maybe down the road. Not saying right now, everybody, but it's a very interesting topic that we could go into great detail about. But now straight on to the next tip from Gabriella, who says, we're focused right now on another project where no calls enter our customer service department. Wow. Through the AIVR, we receive different tasks with different due times for resolving, and the agents make outgoing calls if necessary. Half of the IVR pushes self-service, so the agents don't do unnecessary calls and manual work. They can concentrate on much more difficult cases per se. So at the moment, a chatbot is not at the top of our priorities, which is an interesting point there, I think. But do you think a lot going through the IVR there, do you think, Mike, that maybe the IVR is now being a bit too ignored by too many people, and it can be very useful, as in Gabriella's example?
Certainly from my perspective, I would say, Charlie, that's a great sort of use case, if you will, of thinking differently, thinking smartly, and kind of helping the customer. So, I think the results are clearly being achieved by Gabriella. So from that point of view, I think it's a success story. Excuse me. So yeah, I would embrace it and try and look for other areas where you can kind of automate self-serve. I just like it as a use case. It's good. It's innovative.
A project where no calls enter the customer service department as well. That's it's one that one.
They're going to put us out of a job, Mike.
No. That's success to me. I think that's really it's a bit like Amber, really. Like it shows a path of success when you're achieving, automating the simple stuff, and customers begin giving you more difficult stuff. That to me is like well done. You're on your way. You're making progress. You're achieving. So I like these.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have another tip now from Callum, who says, you always need to have a balance. Self-service is wonderful, but it's important to remember it's not suitable for everyone. An older customer base will still want to be able to talk to somebody. I think this is a very, very good tip. What are your thoughts on this one, Paul?
Yeah, I think it comes back down to customer sort of demographics. I think it's very easy to generalize. But the thing to remember is self-service can be a barrier, and it can be a barrier in a scenario where it's a moment that matters for the customer. So therefore, they want the assurance, the human assurance that something's going to be resolved and it's going to be sorted out quickly. And also where customers are sort of vulnerable. So in terms of they've not got access or they're not comfortable and sort of familiar, again, forcing them to go through a self-service journey when you could predict that that isn't the right answer. So again, I think understanding the nature of your customer base is an essential prerequisite to determine whether promoting self-service is the kind of right thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I love the point on the vulnerable customers, especially, and looking at the kind of emotional differences in between different contact types is quite an interesting topic. Actually, straight back onto emotion now, with a tip from Scott, who says, emotion is a good way to decide which contacts are best to go through self-service. Highly emotive subjects will always be better with human interaction, whereas lower effort, low emotion subjects are better served as self-service. What do you think of this one, Mike? Quite an interesting one.
Yes, no, I agree. It absolutely is, and there's some interesting just sort of kind of features in my slides in a few minutes, and it kind of trying to help, if you like, spot the topics where these are the kind of issues right now to self-serve. So from that perspective, I think it's a good approach right now. Absolutely, I like it.
Yeah, it certainly won't steal too much from your presentation, I hope. But yeah, another tip now from Amber, who says, always good to remember that your company is judged by your agent's abilities to help customers navigate those complex situations and resolve the answers to difficult questions. Never forget, when implementing automation, that your agents are still an important part of your company. When customers want a solution, not just for information, Your contact center agents are vital when customers want something to help them navigate a situation they couldn't handle on their own or through self-service options. I think that's a very nice lesson for all of us to carry forward. But one final tip now is from Lorraine, who says, hold your customers' hands in your self-service journey. Show them how to self-serve. Don't leave it to them to find their own way. It always pays in the end. So I think that specifically in certain cases is a very good tip. But before I now pass over to Mike, quickly, we will move on to our poll question, which is, how well utilized are your self-service systems? So, I'll just put the answers up now for everybody to see on their screen. So yeah, the options are very well, but there's room for growth. Average, there's some take up. Poorly, customers don't use our self-service systems at all. Or the final option that we have here is we don't currently have a self-service offering. So what kind of answers would you expect to see on this one, Mike?
Well, we're relying on audience honesty, so from that perspective, let's see what they say. But I would hope like average to well would be good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's quickly share the results. And good to see indeed. We have this 40% average being the most common answer there. We have 25% saying well, but there's still room for growth. We have 20% saying we don't currently have a self-service offering at all. 9% saying poorly. Customers don't use self-service, and 6% saying very well. But then I guess if everybody had very well, there wouldn't be need for this webinar.
But it's a very consistent scores with the first polls. That's interesting.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent stuff. So I think that lines brilliantly sets you up there, Mike, and I will pass control over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Charlie. And just confirm that you can see my screen okay?
Actually can't on mine. There we go. Now I can. Perfect.
Okay, good. That's a nice sort of bit of feedback really from the audience. So thank you everybody for that. That's kind of helpful. My role here really is all about the technology, and from that perspective, I want to talk about some things that I observe as Mike going about my everyday, and then talk about some of the things that Genesys are thinking about and working on and delivering that I think will be very interesting for this sector. Like Paul, I've been kind of working in this area for quite a while, and I suppose my observations, if you will, have kind of matured over time. But I certainly sort of see that there's a sea change around sort of self-service at the moment, and that's quite exciting to see in some of the tips coming through from the audience. So that's some practical different use cases that I find that exciting. I like this space. Customer experience is a very interesting space to work in, and I kind of feel lucky that I'm actually here. But it's forever resetting itself, rechecking itself, and searching for better. So I quite enjoy that about the roles that I play in the space. And I think I think we're all pretty privileged really to be working in this area. So my little agenda is quite simple. I want to talk about a safari notion, just about sort of fact finding, and again, sort of like building on the honesty that we had from the audience earlier. I kind of want to revisit some of the thoughts about self-service that people may think that this is kind of heavy lifting, and it certainly has been in the past, and I can absolutely verify that, but it's different today. Excuse me. And then the third point I want to talk about is the notion of becoming personal. Sometimes with self-service, it can become a little bit disjointed or a little bit separated, if you will, from the brand. And it's always important to try and maintain, if you like, a connection and consistency. So we help customers to work hard to provide a consistency between their brand messaging and the experience they have in self-service. But then, if you will, we want to take it a step further and think about the individual, and that's kind of an interesting sort of area I think that we can do better, if you will. And with the information that we have today, I think we have the opportunity to do better. And I wanted to touch on some points there for consideration. So jumping into the safari notion really, and this is really just about like a fact find. And if you were to sort of like think about mystery shopping, that's one way to view it. At Genesys, we call it like a customer experience safari, and it's just kind of like our own sort of like naming convention really for this activity. But as we start kind of working with our customers and sort of helping them understanding them as brands, understanding how they operate. The first thing we like to do is just to sort of understand their touch points that they offer to their customers, regardless of what the brand is. So whether it's a high street retailer, whether it's a tech company, financial company, it doesn't matter. It applies to everybody. But you're effectively just observing, kind of like in detail, and if you like, trying out the sort of like the offered ways to connect, and just gathering some feedback from those sort of attempts. If there's web apps, we kind of have a look at those. If it's like IVR based, we kind of go through the various options and explore the trees, if you will. Online obviously is a very rich area, so we can see customers are investing a lot in online sort of self-service. But as you sort of like start asking the obvious questions that we know, and then try to explore how can I solve that problem online, often you come across some significant gaps. So just this notion of a safari that we phrase it as, it's just a good way to kind of, if you will, be critical about your offerings, whether they're social or chat or email, it doesn't matter. Just put that notion in your mind about, okay, pretend today that you're a customer browsing your sort of online, your self-service tools, and how accessible are they? How easy are they? Is it something which, just because you work for the brand, oh well, of course you'd understand that, but actually, if I didn't work for the brand, do I actually understand that step and make the right choice? And therefore, could I make this easier or better? So that's something to sort of think about. And kind of bringing on the notion of easy, I think what I've sort of seen really is that as things have started to kind of come together between the contact center and, let's say, like online activities, we've seen a lot about sort of like help buttons and sort of like ways to offer customers connection points. And from the Genesys point of view, we have a capability called widgets. It's kind of a nice, funky, sort of easy name. The beauty is, if you will, that to actually get a widget into your website, and here's a bit of tech, everybody, so don't panic. It's one line of code, all right? So we call that line of code a snippet. So you have a snippet and a widget. But the point is that for somebody who is building your website or like developing your website, modernizing it, or just if you like improving it, like slipping this sort of like snippet into their sort of code stack is pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. And what you will see then, if you will, is what's kind of surfaced to the right of the screen. So an invitation there to kind of interact, if you like, with the brand. And you can customize these sort of invitations. So like these are all about like live chat, obviously involving a human, perhaps sending messages, maybe live assistance. But they can be modified to, like chat with my bot today, or FAQ section, or connect with me right now, or call me back perhaps. So these invites are kind of easy, accessible, and if you like, very, very discreet and sort of like not heavy lifting to incorporate into a busy website. So think about that. And from that point of view, that notion, if you will, of bringing in the self-service invites, exactly the same thing applies. So you run your sort of widget, your invitation is kind of based on a self-serve, and the snippet associated with it sort of pops in a single line of code. So very easy, very accessible, and I think kind of easy to adopt. The next sort of area I wanted to touch on was this notion of personal. And this is very sort of interesting, I feel, and we're trying to sort of think about the customer and what can we do to, if you will, value the customer and demonstrate to the customer that they are precious to us. So from that point of view, as a customer, often in self-service, if it's all very sort of clinical and you're kind of in there, you're doing it, you're getting what you need, and off you go, that's fine, that's kind of good. But if you will, if you are in a situation where you need that notion, if you like, of help, then being able to recognize, where the customer is at that moment and what their challenge is, and if you will, the context of what that challenge is, that then starts to become very, very important. And hence this notion, if you like, of becoming empathetic. And building on that, then, you'll see these traits of empathy, trust, and loyalty. Of course, we've been sort of over the years educating our teams to kind of build these skills and incorporate them into their people skills, so that as they are in communication with the customer live, they're obviously building these sort of traits into their dialogues and helping to deliver a great experience for your customer. From my perspective, I believe in self-service, these traits are absolutely kind of critical to kind of maintaining that consistency. And being able to kind of recognize that customer's dilemma right now and the context of that dilemma, and being able to sort of help the customer react to that by way of anticipating, you know, I see there's like a lost package, or I see that it's kind of gone to somebody else. Therefore, okay, I need to sort of ship another one straight away, and I'm going to then sort of ping a customer to let them know that. That's the kind of moments where even within self-service, you can start to trigger really strong loyalty. And obviously, it's when you get those kind of like unexpected delight moments where you really sort of demonstrate that you're thinking about the customer, so much so that, oh, I know you're in a moment of need, and by the way, here's the kind of like a resolution very, very quickly, very, very smartly, very, 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 very professionally. Up goes your loyalty factor like massively with that particular customer, even though it's in self-service. So what you will hear from Genesys over the months and years ahead is this notion, if you like, of experience as a service. And it's kind of, you know, the example I've just described is very much that's the kind of notion that we're looking to build on. Not just about sort of self-service, it's about the whole idea of customer experience. And to that end, we know things like, you know, SaaS, the software as a service, and you know, lots of vendors are kind of very sort of like busy kind of turning themselves into SaaS-based companies, including Genesys, by the way. Gartner kind of, you know, feature this notion, if you like, of customer contact as a service, you know, so CC as a service. Amazon, you would recognize probably as like infrastructure as a service, so IaaS. So this kind of like way of sort of positioning or categorizing your niche in the market is becoming very interesting. And for Genesys, we feel experience as a service is a good place for us to kind of dig our plow into that sort of field and start to, you know, plow and harvest a rich opportunity for us as a business going forward. So expect to see more from experience as a service by Genesys in the weeks and months ahead. If I kind of take an example about the customers who are browsing online, and this typically wouldn't have been an area of interest to a brand like Genesys, or if you will, to the customer experience environment, but actually it is, because tools like engagement kind of allow us to kind of watch the customer behavior and make assessments of the customer behavior, and using AI to kind of watch that behavior and sort of map behaviors to, well, when this happened before, the outcome was A. When that happened before, the outcome was B, and sort of like helping, if you like, to sort of encourage the customer, shape the customer, steer the customer to the outcome that we would like to achieve. Being able to do that in self-service becomes very, very interesting. And the idea, if you will, of sort of, you know, getting with the right customer at the right time with the right sort of nudge, and by nudge it might just be like a bot pinging out some information. We've got a nice sort of like a use case here where using this capability, the customer is online, they're achieving what they want to achieve, they're doing a little bit of bot dialogue with the sort of with the brand, so lots of automation happening here. But the outcome that we're getting from the dialogue is, you know, first contact resolution. No need to involve a live agent, no need to sort of involve sort of the wider contact center, just by utilizing what we're sort of seeing by way of online activity in conjunction with automation fulfillment, we're able to sort of satisfy that customer then and there. So that's a nice sort of an example, if you will, of the notion of predictive engagement. And as you can see, it kind of takes us beyond the sort of the cold chats, emails, and socials into, well, actually, there's a lot of activity happening on my online environment, and am I aware of that, the experience of that, and can I help to improve, manage, make that better? Maybe bring it consistently into the contact center way of thinking. Something else, if you like, which is emerging, which I'm quite excited about, is this idea of sort of teaming, and here we have sort of Genesys and Google sort of teaming together to bring good value for our customers. What we have here really is where, you know, Genesys has been around a while. It kind of understands the notion of omnichannel. It knows how to build the necessary email, call, chat flows, social flows, etc., to kind of get the work to the right people. It knows about skill profiles for people. It knows how to find the smart agent to resolve. It knows how to help you achieve your outcomes, and that's very much our sort of bread and butter, really. What's really cool, though, is that if we can incorporate and kind of lift from or work with like people like Google, who have got great access to machine learning. You remember, like the population of users that are using the sort of Google's like tools are extraordinary. You know, global, every sort of dialect, every sort of accent. It's very, very interesting and like valuable sort of like data that we can access there. Think about the natural language understanding. It becomes very, very sharper, much more sort of accurate, much more useful. And then obviously speech recognition. You know, we kind of need these sort of tools to help us deliver great self-service applications. And because these guys have got such a reach, such a global presence, and they're getting such global sampling, they sort of like the quality of what we're able to get access to is superb. So kind of incorporating that sort of expertise from the Google side into the sort of like the expertise from the Genesys side gives us great ways to kind of bring together, simple call flows, very, very accessible, if you like, technically. Like these things are very much like plug and play, but also very, very accessible commercially. So, often in the past, I've seen some of these self-serve projects turn into like major, major investment projects. And that's kind of no longer the case. We're getting very much more steered towards transaction-based pricing. Micro charges per interaction, those type of things. It becomes very, very different and very, very interesting and very, very accessible. So I'd encourage the audience to kind of explore it. I suppose this to me really is the sort of like the opportunity to change. And if this reflects your sort of self-service environment for your customers, then just think hard about it, because often it's an area of high frustration for your customer, and I know it certainly is for me. And as soon as I kind of feel I'm in one of these branches, I just switch off, and it just feels kind of wrong to me. It's like old-fashioned, and it's like, really, you're kind of asking me to engage with you like this way? It can become very challenging. So my advocacy is to get your chainsaws out and start cutting down these trees, because really we've got to just change that notion like completely. And the kind of idea that we're thinking now, or if you like, or the accessibility to tools that we have right now, is a case of like offering an open door to all of these options, immediately, and not having to kind of navigate your way through logical steps to get there, where often you kind of fail on step 2 and suddenly you're in a cul-de-sac. The kind of notion, if you like, of an intent bot becomes quite interesting, and being able to sort of like find from your customer quickly what it is they have an issue with, and turn it into like a conversational, simple, easy, pleasing, intelligent experience. That's really what we're trying to get to. Fast, convenient, like that was really cool. That's the sort of outcome we're looking to try and help our customers achieve. So a real transformation is kind of happening in self-service, and the technologies to enable that are becoming very accessible. And from that perspective, I would encourage you to revisit the idea of investing in that area, and start to get some of those benefits that Paul outlined in his session. I'm not going to talk about all of these because not all of them are relevant to the topic today, but certainly the conversational IVR element, that's very sort of effective and real, and kind of can fast start, if you will, with a customer. The multi-channel chatbot is very, very cool, but also topic modeling. So think about topic modeling. When I think I saw from I think it was Amber, where you were sort of like, you're resolving, if you like, some of the more simple tasks. You then had the more complex kind of going into the agent pool, and there was like, challenges around the planning associated with that. Like I say, that's kind of good. That's a good sign. You're on the right path. What I would also say is like topic modeling will kind of help you identify what are the next subjects in self-serve that I can bring into that sort of automation section. As you kind of move the issues away from the agent into self-serve, topic modeling is a really cool way to spot those and help you prioritize those, so that you're working on the right elements to automate versus something else. You kind of get a priority list, and that I think is kind of valuable for this subject. And the last thing really is just this kind of wrap around, think about the orchestration. The orchestration for all customer experience should reside in the contact center. Okay, so whether it's call flows, chat flows, email flows, FAQs, the delivery, if you like, to your customer of the experience must come from the contact center. And in that sense, regardless of what the sort of tools are, they must be simple, easy, accessible, be able to change, continuous improvement. Like, if you that sort of poll that we asked earlier, where like, actually was in the quiz, Charlie, about when was the last time you sort of touched your self-service tools. I mean, like an unfortunately high percentage of people don't revisit their self-service. So it's because it's so difficult. It's because it's so sort of like hard-coded and sort of welded together, like so rigid. It's just inaccessible. So to that end, these modern tools are accessible. You can get onto them easy. You can teach yourself and work with them yourself and deliver much more value. Doesn't matter what the channel is. It's the same. Self-service can apply to all channels. We have this library of micro apps at Genesys. What I mean by micro app is like an ID and V process is one micro app. Change of address, postcode, meter number, where's my stuff, bill, bill delivery point, you know, just you can imagine the typical sort of library of questions that we get. It's already coded. They're kind of there. You just pull in the micro app into your dialogue, and it's kind of it's already sort of pre-built, if you will, your dialogue for your customers. So again, it's easy, it's simple. You don't need to be a sort of a tech specialist to work with these kind of tools. And the last thing then is the idea of blended AI, and absolutely AI is hugely valuable for us to make it effective, if you will, self-serve. But it's not all about the AI, okay? It's all about the customer. And sometimes I will use AI to satisfy the customer, and sometimes I won't use AI. I actually use a human to satisfy the customer. And getting back to that experience as a service, you know, keep that very much in mind. You know, self-service is a choice, and provide the option and choice for your customer. And that way, that sort of blended notion of being able to allow the customer to make their choice, I think is the right sort of direction that we should be heading with this kind of capability. So on that, Charlie, I'm going to hand back to you, and I look forward to more tips.
Excellent, great, thanks for that, Mike. There was lots of great takeaways again there that I have, but quickly, before we get into that, a quick poll for everybody listening is, would you like a quick demo of any of the solutions that Mike just talked about? So I'll just launch that now for everybody. So yeah, the takeaways that I took from that, I really like the idea of a customer safari, testing all of your systems and getting that outside in perspective. I thought that was really great. I really like the predictive engagement kind of through AI. So you would map customer behavior and then meet the right customer at the right time with the right solution, with the right self-service solution. I thought that was really nice, and anything to kind of get away from those long IVR branches as you were talking about, and those that intent bot was something really interesting for me actually. So yeah, lots of great stuff. So I'll quickly close that poll for everybody, and just a quick little note: if you press yes or but otherwise still like a demonstration, please go to www.callcenterhelper.com/demo. Excellent. And now onto our top tips again. And the chat room's been very busy once again. And let's see some of the tips that have been coming in. So the first is from Amber, who says, warm fuzzies to add to Mike's presentation on personal connection. We originally would contact veterans once a year on their birthday to follow up and check in on their situations. We automated this process with a generated email. Recently, we've received feedback from a veteran who stated, wow, you guys are just extremely kind, and I thank you for checking on me. It can be lonely trying to get through life with the disability. Some days are good and others are not so much, but thank you. I want to be productive in life and not give up, and you guys are pushing me and picking me up. I think that's a really nice message. Yes, really good job as well. Yeah, absolutely. Great job there. And another tip now coming in from Marco, who says, to ensure the self-service of your organizations works smoothly and efficiently, follow this six-step process. So the first step is invest in better knowledge management. Second, offer choices. Third, support mobile access to self-service capabilities. 4, recognize the difference between UI and UX. 5, exploit existing corporate automation capabilities. And 6, ensure maintenance of your self-service is done regularly. I don't know, Mike, what you think of this 6-step strategy?
Yeah, I like the 4 and 6, especially for me, really, just because from where I'm coming from, really, you know, like that UI, like the user interface is very, very important, and focus on it, invest in it, because it makes the world of difference. And then absolutely, you never believe that you've kind of got it done in self-service. Always kind of be paranoid and always go back and check, and what can I do better? What can I do better? Remember the topics module that I mentioned? It'll give you the sort of like the hit list of what needs to be done next. So just, again, keep that in mind.
Excellent stuff. Excellent. And another tip now coming in from Sarah, who says, a very simple way we push self-service is a preemptive chat on all of our web pages. The chatbot would then pop up after someone is sitting on the page for more than 30 seconds, saving a lot of potential phone calls. Complex inquiries are then transferred to the live agents. This is a little bit about what you were talking about, wasn't it, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. So predictive engagement would work very nicely there, Sarah. So just so you know. but that's really cool. And the nice thing about it is, if you will, yeah. Anyway, it's a good fit.
Excellent stuff. So another tip from Amber today. Really wanting that bottle of champagne and box of chocolates. Can't blame you. Is don't forget. Is don't forget your customer base when implementing self-services. A non-profit organization that provides services to veterans, we have discovered that younger generations prefer automated services while old vets prefer phone conversations. What do you think of this this one, Paul?
Yeah, I think that's very true, particularly for those who've got the millennial generation in your customer base. They would far rather preference to sort it out themselves than be pushed into actually speaking, and also they can be really proactive at trying to fix it and actually find a sort of resolution. So they can be quite persistent, and that, you know, in a sort of good way. So yeah, that could well be a segment that you might want to target in terms of, you know, using them as your advocates, use them to kind of, you know, test your system, sort of co-create with you, because those are the ones that will actually tease out all of the kind of nuances.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, I think lots of great advice there. And I just want to quickly follow up on finish on a quick question that's come from Lisa, who says, do you think that chatbots can potentially frustrate the customer experience? I don't know what you think of this one, Mike.
Yes, absolutely, it can do. I mean, like, again, that kind of goes back to the point that, I missed the name, about the UX and the UI and the UX. So you really got to think about the way that you're, you know, what am I fulfilling in this sort of self-serve, you know, like module, and am I doing that? And if I'm not fulfilling, then don't launch it. You know, you gotta be delighting your customer and never frustrating your customer. And if it's getting to a point where they're getting frustrated, then just back off. You're getting too complicated. So you know, invest in that sort of like user experience and customer experience. Sorry, the user interface and the customer experience part. That they're the two to focus on.
And Mike, there's one very simple KPI, which is with a chatbot, it's all about sort of containment rate. So how much can the chatbot actually resolve?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, correct.
Excellent stuff. That's a new metric for me, actually. So
don't make it an excuse for something. You know, make it resolve something. And if you're trying to hide behind it, you're going to get found out. So that's that thing.
Yeah, spot on.
Excellent. It's almost, I guess, like treat your chatbot as you would any other advisor in terms of measuring it. And I think that's a lovely sentiment to finish today's webinar on. And so if all of you in the chat room could just put in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about the webinar? It would be really great to hear your feedback. But just a quick little chance now to look at our winning tip for today, which has come in from Chris, who says, I believe you have to be incredibly careful in how you use your bot automation. Nothing more frustrating when you want to speak to an advisor. We use a simple chatbot to speed up ID&V processes, also taking all account payments. We have automated our payment IVR. I think that's a very nice tip, and it links very well to the conversation that we just had.
Seamless, Charlie, seamless.
Almost like it was.
Nice one.
Yes, great stuff. So once again, we just really like to get all of your feedback from the audience. So if you could just complete the survey, which is just 4 questions long when you leave the webinar, that would be really helpful for us. And just a reminder that if you want to catch up on any of today's learnings, you can watch the replay and the slides, which will be available later this afternoon from www.callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars. And a quick little note, there's still future webinars, and Mike will be back in a few weeks' time on increasing customer satisfaction. So if you want to make sure you register for that one, it's www.callcenterhelper.com/webinars. So just enough time for me now to thank both of our speakers today. So thank you for joining us, Paul, first.
Yes, thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone. I hope you got some sort of value out of it. Just take one tip and implement it, and it will definitely be a very good investment of time.
Excellent stuff, and thanks to you also, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Paul, and thanks everybody for joining. Appreciate it.
Excellent, great. So we'll be back. We're not here next week, but we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time, and I look forward to hearing from you all after. Thanks again for joining us today, and bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.